Perfect. Now the recorder's going. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Justin Hopper. I'm the Chief of Civil Rights for CDFA. I'm also this year's chair for the Disability Advisory Committee. I'd also like to take a moment and recognize our DAC membership who are here right now. We have Madison McMahon. She's our Secretary and Treasurer. We have Jessica Billingsley, who is our backup to Madison always, and she's also part of the events committee who's really helped me out with a lot of this stuff. Who else is here today? We've got Mandy Murray, who's a member of our DAC as well. And so those are the folks who are here right now, and I'm sure folks will be rolling in throughout the presentation. So thank you all for being here. With that though, you're not here to listen to me talk about the DAC and how great we are. So with that, I'm gonna actually welcome Justine Fisher. She's the Community Director for CalHOPE, and she's here to talk to us about mental health and children and how it relates to us as parents and family members and how we can support that. So Justine, welcome. And I'm going to turn it over to you and make you a co-host so you can do your presentation.
Great. And thank you. And thank you all for joining us at your lunchtime. You're hopefully a little bit break in the day and that you are able to grab something to eat as you're on this lunch and learn. And please do so. I know how probably everybody on this Zoom has a lot happening within their day, so please take your time to do that. I'm also going to ask Justin to kind of send out a poll just out of curiosity, really wanting to know if you have any children at home or family members you care for that fall within a school's designation, either K2, 3-5, middle, or high school, so that we can talk some bit about that today, kind of just seeing that we're all over the board so much that we've got representation from all of those kind of school groups, which is great. Seeing a fair amount in middle school. That's the hardest time of year sometimes for kids kind of age, and we'll be talking about that a bit. So thank you for doing that. And then I am going to just get started here so that we can, all right, let's see.
So you guys should all see the poll at this point. These were the results we got for the folks that are here right now.
Yeah. So hopefully you are seeing my screen. Yes?
You're good. We can see it.
Yay. Thank you. Never know. I'm working on 2 screens and I'm like, hopefully that's going well. So as I said, Justin introduced me. I'm Justine Fisher. I am the Community Director for CalHOPE Schools. And CalHOPE Schools Initiative is was designed or came into being during COVID. CalHOPE came into being during COVID to support Californians and their mental well-being. And then originally it started out as a just an emergency line or a care line, a place to talk to peers, especially for youth. And now there are 13 other programs. And so I represent CalHOPE Schools and the CalHOPE Schools Initiative, and we'll be talking about that in a few minutes, all that is offered there. I do just want to talk for a few minutes about sort of general mental health and mental well-being. You know, we are all, everybody on this call, I'm making the assumption, are all human beings. We are all complicated creatures. We all have needs. We all have responsibilities. You are all working, spending your day with responsibilities and assignments to make a larger activity happen, a larger program, a larger group, serve the needs of many people. Some you may know and some you may not know. And as human beings, we feel responsibility. We feel that we should do our best work. We have to get along with each other. We have to get along with people we work with and the people at home. And these are complicated things for human beings, and our mental well-being has a lot to do with all the different hats that we wear and all the different places that we are and all the different things that we're responsible for. And when you add something like COVID or some other trauma to that, it makes us just being people even a little harder. And as you are CDFA professionals and you are home holders, and my definition of a home holder is if you are a person, a human being who is responsible for yourself and or any other living being, whether that's a plant or pets, or you have children, or you're taking care of elderly relatives or elderly parents, or you have a spouse or a partner or a roommate. If you are responsible to someone else and in care of someone else, you are a home holder, whether you're living in a house, whether you're living in an RV, whether you're living in a mobile home or a condo or an apartment or in a car, wherever you are living, if you are in care of someone else, you are a home holder. And especially hard on people who have a professional life and a personal life is really finding that balance. And that balance is super the key thing for our mental health and our mental well-being. When we're off balance, we're easily agitated, we may have anxiety, we may feel extreme joy or extreme sorrow, we may feel stressed or under pressure. And keeping that balance or finding a way to find resilience and hope within that balance is our way of staying mentally fit and feeling that we have good mental well-being and support. And I'm going to say that if you are sort of like me, you have plans and you figure out how things are going to go, and they're going to go super smoothly and everything's going to work out okay, and you're going to get everything done and you're going to care for all your people. And that isn't what happens, right? It's what happens is that crazy squiggly line where we are all trying to figure out how we can be our best selves and care for the people that we love and are in our care, how we are responsible to those we work with and our families, how we take care of our pets and our plants and all of those things. And when we have something added extra to that, when we have a trauma or a grief or sort of this global awareness, which caused kind of this very traumatic global experience such as COVID, our plans really get kind of screwed up, for lack of a better phrase. And what happens to us as human beings is our plans, or what we know to be our way of being, changes, and that causes a lot of anxiety. What is really anxiety provoking for human beings is not knowing. Not knowing is the most fearful thing that there is. Everything that we're planning on might be changing. We don't know what to plan on. What was normal doesn't seem normal anymore. Some of the easiest things we were doing are now not possible. There's a change in how we operate. All of the things that we know, that we plan, that we expect. If we have a good mental well-being and balance, we can find resilience and hope, and we can handle some of those struggles. But when those struggles escalate, that is when we really have a hard time as human beings with our mental well-being and our mental health, and sometimes that balance of trying to be hopeful and resilient while being stressed and anxious, even depressed, or have major challenges or concerns in our own lives or in the lives of people around us. And so CalHOPE at its onset, which I mentioned earlier, was created as a way for people during COVID to call a line, especially youth who were having a really hard time being at home, not being able to socialize, that was a developmental issue. Youth, a time from about age 12 to 25 is really a time where developmentally being in social groups or having social interactions is part of our mental health. It's part of our development as people. And when we were all kind of sequestered in our homes, or not being able to see family members, or not being able to be with family members during health scares or traumatic events, or even births of babies or birthday parties or whatever was happening, that causes all of our anxiety to rise and rise and rise. And so while CalHOPE had started out as just a line for people to call with emergencies and feeling a little out of sorts and not mentally balanced or mentally feeling well. And when I say mentally balanced, I mean feeling that anxiety or that stress, feeling kind of out of the norm. That is when CalHOPE said, hey, we need to create some other programs. We're seeing a lot of things happen. And especially when people went back to school, both educators and students and parents who were getting their students ready to go back to school. That was a really hard time. It was hard to learn over Zoom. It was hard to not be in those social situations. It was odd for kindergartners who hadn't learned how to form a line or know what a bell ringing at a school was, or to understand what recess was, to all of a sudden, maybe 1 or 2 years later, be in a school situation and not having learned those basic skills, those basic socializations that we come to know about as we're learning and growing. And so CalHOPE created the CalHOPE Schools Initiative that has 100% free resources for educators, for students, and for parents. And so what they started with is these 3 films and materials that come together with the films. So there's a trusted space, which talks about the most important thing for any of us, and especially children and youth, is having an adult in their life that is a place that they trust. And that could be in the home, that could be at school, that could be in a religious community, that could be in some kind of program or activity. But having an adult that they trust is an antidote to the stress and anxiety of trauma or grief. It is actually one of the #1 supports for getting people out of grief and trauma, is having someone they trust who they feel is provides that support, provides that place of safety for them. And so A Trusted Space was a film that was made during the pandemic, right at probably about September of 2020. And it has a lot of experts and a lot of educators and students and parents talking about how difficult it was, how it's hard to live in that traumatic time. And the experts talk about the things that we can do to support youth. There are resource guides that parents can use. There's a professional development that's available that is for schools, but is also useful for anyone, which talks about the 5 adult SEL muscles that we all need for resilience and hope, and to help us be that safe space, that safe, trusting space for youth or children. And it comes with a curriculum that you can use within a school or even at home, which is building a trusted space in 5 days. It just has activities to share. That A Trusted Space film is for all ages. It can help with any age child, any age school group. It is great to share at any kind of business or organization, because it really talks about the need for developing relationships and why in human brain chemistry relationships are so vital, and how they offset our stress, anxiety, trauma, and grief. Angst, which is a film that is made about anxiety, is really geared towards 12 and up. It's a movie that talks about anxiety on a very profound level. So not maybe the regular anxiety that someone may have every day about like, hey, I'm doing a presentation today, I'm a little anxious, or hey, I'm running a marathon, I'm a little anxious. Hey, I'm, going to see someone I haven't seen in a long time. That kind of anxiety is kind of normal. It's kind of regular. It helps us get through some stressful situations or situations that we're worried about. Angst is about more in-depth anxiety. It's the kind of anxiety where, for whatever reason, I can't go into that office building. I can't go back to school. I can't be in an elevator. I'm so anxious and concerned about my safety or somebody's health. It's that kind of paralyzing anxiety that doesn't allow us to kind of go on with our day and move forward. In angst, there are a lot of young people talking about their anxiety and what they've used, or how they've tried to express it, what they've asked for support. There's a bunch of, there's some professional folks in here in this film that also talk about things parents, caregivers, educators can do. Michael Phelps happens to be in this film, and he also talks about his own anxieties and kind of coping with them, and that he even, he needed help and support going through a lot of periods where he was feeling that his mental well-being was being stretched. Angst comes with a lot of resource materials for home, for schools, for organizations. Anyone can use them. There is some workbooks. There's some short little blurb pieces. There's a bunch of different resources available that go with the film. Stories of Hope there are 7 of them. They are made by the Z Cares Foundation, and they are stories of youth telling their story, talking about challenges, talking about anxieties, talking about being bullied, talking about having a disorder, talking about, feeling mentally unwell. And they are talking about their experience and how they found hope and resilience and support to get through those difficult times. Stories of Hope are really more geared to older age, I'd say 15 to 25. There is a classroom teacher that can come on, comes on after the short, that will lead a discussion. There's a workbook. There's ancillary materials. All of this is all available for anyone in California. The goals of the CalHOPE School Initiative was to bring all these resources to folks free, not a cost at all. It's resources for all public schools, for all agencies. It's resources for parents and for students. Its whole point is that we need to promote this mental health and wellness because we knew prior to COVID and the pandemic that people had challenges, that they were concerned about even stating that they were feeling mentally unwell, or their mental well-being was being stressed. And we know that during COVID, that was so exacerbated. That was just on for so many people, and especially young people. The CalHOPE Schools Initiative and the other CalHOPE programs definitely want to say, look, we recognize the impact of COVID, of the pandemic. We recognize there's stress. There was stress before, and now there's even more. There was anxiety before, and now it's been heightened. There are other challenges that so many people, young people, live with: housing insecurity, food insecurity, concerns about safety, racial justice, equity. These are all things that were compounded. They were all apparent and needed our care and attention before the pandemic, and then were exacerbated by the pandemic, where people really started to notice. And we really started to realize we need to destigmatize. We need to say, hey, you know what? It's okay. A lot is happening in our world. It is overwhelming. And so much is requested of us and required of us to find that balance again, right? So we understand. And so we want to recognize that it's out there. We want to understand that people might have stress, trauma, anxiety, grief, and we want to say, hey, it's okay. Let's destigmatize that. Let's start having conversations about mental health. Let's start talking about what we can provide and support material and resources for that sort of baseline of mental health that everybody needs. What can we do to support that social, emotional well-being? What can we do to make sure that everyone feels that they have a safe and trusted space? How are we going to build these relationships? And the CalHOPE Schools Initiative, that is its focus. And while it's designed for schools, as I've said, it does translate into other areas for use at the home or in any other agency or organization. The CalHOPE Schools Initiative, the free program, it's the access to all of these 3 sets of films: The Trusted Space, Angst, and All the Stories of Hope. And every support guide, curriculum resource, everything that's available at calhopeschools.org. You can get to it easily by either going to just calhope.org. You can click on the CalHOPE Schools League, or you can go to calhopeschools.org. I also shared, I believe Jessica has a listing of a bunch of other resources that she can share with you, either put in the chat or can send to anybody, that are resources for CalHOPE, for CalHOPE Schools, other organizations, resources in Spanish. So that is the key thing, was getting resources in people's hands that were available to them at any time. So if you needed to watch them at 11 o'clock at night or 4 o'clock in the morning, or you were just realizing after having a conversation with somebody you love that they maybe needed some support, here's a way to check that out. These are baseline resources. Some folks may be enough for some. Some folks may need to find some other professional assistance. There are links for that in the resources that I shared, so that if you or someone you love needs more assistance, needs more help in feeling that mental well-being come back, those resources are available for you to connect with. Some other resources that CalHOPE Schools provides is there is a monthly forum. It's a podcast. It is about mental health, and it does talk mostly about education. So its focus is on the educational community. It is a podcast for people who work in schools or have children in schools. There is also one of the most important things was having all of these resources together for you in one place. So you're not rushing around everywhere looking for all these things. It's hard enough in our busy days and finding that balance, right? To sometimes get the laundry done and feed ourselves and take care of our animals and all the others that we love, and still try to maintain, some semblance of our own mental health and not be running around looking for things. So the single sign-on to have all these resources for you was really very important, and an important aspect of the CalHOPE Schools Initiative. So again, I'm going to go through these initiative resources: A Trusted Space, which is about building relationships; Angst, Building Resilience, which is about coming and learning that resilience for helping us cope with our anxiety; and the Stories of Hope, these youth stories to kind of inspire and instill in us that hopefulness and that finding of resilience. Resilience and hopefulness, CalHOPE, are the keys that we need to finding that balance and to help us eliminate that stress and trauma. So the CalHOPE Schools Initiative, as I said, is easy to find. You just go to calhopeschools.org. It's available. You can see this is kind of the landing page of the website. And you sign in, you have to sign up for it. It will ask you your name. If you're in California, it's a California program. What is, I believe, because it's the schools on this particular site, it will ask you if you're in an area, what your school district is or your county is. And then once you sign up, you get a code and you can watch and use all of these resources over and over again. You can share the code with the folks in your family. If you're a member of a parent group, such as PTA or a PFA or a PTO, you can share them with your organizations at the school. You can share them with your school. The code is available for you to share. We have people who've used their codes thousands of times, and we have people that have used their codes once. We've had people that have shared these in large groups in an auditorium at a school site. We've had organizations who have shared them with parents and parent engagement on webinars. So these are for you to utilize in a way that best serves you, your community, and your family. So I'm just going to put up my contact information here. Always happy to answer any questions or talk more about what is happening within CalHOPE. And then I also wanted to just take a few moments with you and answer any questions that you may have. And then if you, as a group, would like to, I'll stay on until 1 o'clock, but if you would like to break out into breakout rooms, we can break those up by age group if you want to talk with others who may be having kids the same age, and what is happening in their schools. So I'm going to stop this share right now. We can always put information in the chat. But happy to answer any questions or have any discussion if you're interested. Any thoughts or comments?
I'll say, Justine, that was super helpful. And I had no idea that you guys existed before we started looking into you. So I'm really excited to dive into some of those resources that you talked about and mentioned. And I know both of my kiddos, I have a 5th grader, sorry.
That's all right.
I have a 4th grader and an 8th grader. So I had to pick one. But anyway, I've got 2 age groups, and they both, they both have gone through or are going through a lot of the things you talked about. So I really appreciate you coming and talking with us today about the resources that your organization has. Those sound like they sound great. So I'm looking forward to diving into them some more. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And, I'm going to say especially for all of us, it's really hard. I'm going to say middle school, you middle school parents, props to you. Middle school, I'm going to say 6th, 7th, 8th grade, maybe even some young 9th graders. They had the most difficult, time. It's really a hard time, middle school. That social time is super important. And for kids that may have missed 1, 2, 3 years of it, that was also a developmental milestone, sort of like toddlers who, or preschoolers who miss preschool. And, that point, really, really hard for them. And we really want to support that. Lila says she has a question on her, and she's on her iPhone.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Lila. Or is it
So
Lilia? Sorry.
Lilia or Lily?
Sorry, Lily.
No,
so
no worries.
sorry.
So I have a question, and I'm sure that this is a very small percentage of it, but what my kids and my husband and I went through is we had the opposite. So during COVID and during the shutdown, I had, at the time, one was in elementary, one was in junior high, and one was in high school. But what happened to us, and they get teased about it, or they were, is, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but COVID was very easy on us. It brought us really close. They loved being home and being even tighter. They excelled at school. So we get the opposite problem because their friends and people, you know, even adults, they're like, well, no, COVID was hard. And they were like, Mommy, but it was easy for us and it brought us close and we have great memories and we were super close all the time. We started games, we started crafting, we started baking. So those children that went the opposite way, you know, that feel almost guilty because they didn't have a hard time. What happens there? What is there resources for that? Is there, you know, it's almost like they feel bad because their friends had a hard time and they did not. So I've told them, of course, you know, no, you know, everybody's experience is different. You don't need to feel guilty. That's your feelings, but they don't see that a lot. They don't hear that a lot. So to them, it's like, well, is that weird then that we didn't have a hard time? Have you come across that at with any of the age groups?
Yeah, you know, so for a percentage of kids, majorly, most people struggled. For a percentage of people and children, it was not that traumatic of an experience for many different reasons. Some of it is family resources, some that were not as affected because perhaps a close family member was not ill, because they enjoyed it. You know, for some of my family member who are deeply introverted, they were so grateful we didn't have any family gatherings during that time. I mean, as you're saying, it was not this exact same for everyone. I don't know if I have any specific resources for those who had an easier time. I will say that the majority of folks didn't have that, but I'm grateful that your kids did. That is wonderful. And also I think that, you know, when you're talking about with anything, many of us, all of us have different life experiences. All of us have different things that happen to us, and how we experience them and what we take away with them are what are ours. They're ours to own. And I think sometimes, you know, unfortunately, people don't necessarily see that the empathy works both ways. I am sure your family is empathetic to those who may have had more struggles, and people don't really realize that if they're saying something to someone who didn't have the same struggles and sort of, you know, saying, well, you don't understand, you didn't have this happen or whatever, they're not understanding that empathetic side of our experiences may be collective and still different. So while your family may have had an easier time, and there's a lot of positive out of that, they also probably are aware that in the larger picture of things, not everybody had that easy time. So I'm not sure, again, if I have exact resources for what you're looking for, but I will look for some. But I do want to say that even within some of these resources that we have, you know, there is a recognition that not everybody had the same experience. But what we do know from both quantitative and qualitative data is that the majority of people had a similar experience, which was not positive or had negative undertones or mental health and well-being concerns. So I don't know if that helps you any, but I will look and see if we can find anything on that as well, because that is a curious thing to see if we have resources for.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It's just, there's no books, there's no nothing that says, hey, you went through COVID and it was great for you. That's a small percentage, you know, but I understand what you're saying, and we'll just continue saying what we're saying. And that was your experience, and, you know, it brought us really close, and that's great. And, you know, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if anyone else has any questions.
Jessica says in the chat, I think the best takeaway from this lunch and learn is that CalHOPE is taking steps to start a conversation about mental health and create an empathetic place for Californians. It needed to happen, and I agree with that.
Yeah, and there are other CalHOPE resources. So of course, there is still at calhope.org, there is the CalHOPE line. In the resources that I sent Jessica, there's the warm line phone number. If you are feeling that you need to talk to someone, there's a 24-hour line number. If you're feeling the need to talk with somebody, there are other resources. And there are lots of opportunities. I mean, I've talked to people in many other states and have done some work with people in many other states. California, through CalHOPE and other opportunities that were created in support, is way ahead of many other states in the US, kind of with this now focus on mental health and mental well-being. It has been an ongoing issue for some time. And of course, you know, one of the things that did come out of this, of the pandemic, was creating this awareness and this destigmatizing of getting assistance or feeling that you're not alone, or wanting to make sure that you are supporting all of those people that you love. So, you know, we're fortunate in that sense. And I don't know if you want to maybe create some breakout rooms, if anyone wants to go and talk in those, or if you want to stay on as a group. I'm amenable to whatever is going on.
I think we may only have like 1 or 2 people in a couple of the other groups. I would
Okay.
think would be in the middle school range. So maybe staying here would be more
Will be fine.
advantageous.
Sounds good.
I did want to make a comment for sure, because I don't have kids. And as I've been working with Justine and Jessica and Madison and Mandy, putting this together, you know, we've gone through the resources, we've gone through all of these different things, and there's stuff in there that benefit everybody, not just kids, not just you know, school age children, but there's also stuff in there for people like me. I'm actually a great uncle, so my nephew has a kid, because I'm the baby of the family, so my nephews are my age, and so they've got kids, and then I'm also a godparent, and so we take a very active role in their education and in their life, and we see them all the time. And you know, my oldest great nephew is about to go into kindergarten, and COVID really stunted him quite a bit because he didn't have that social interaction with people that, you know, the toddler ages usually do. And so starting to go back to school, starting to be more exposed to more and more people, he was anxious, he was scared, but he was also at an age where he couldn't really put words to it. And so, you know, I wish that we had had these resources and knew what we were looking at earlier on, because maybe we could have, you know, dissuaded some of that anxiety or some of the, you know, the worry that he was having. And now he's thriving. He's in karate and all kinds of other things that we go and support him. And he's going to be in the Dixon Mayfair parade. Like, he's doing a little bit of everything right now, but it took him a long time to get there, you know, because COVID had stunted him for so long. And so these resources are really, really useful for non-parents as well. Like, if you're a big part in a child's life, I feel like it's helped me kind of figure out my role and how I can help support my nephew and his parents in what they're working with as well.
And that's exactly, so what you created and your family created was that trusted space, right? Because having that base of a place that's a trusted adult, and that's, I'm going to say for Lily's kids in her home, that trusted adult, that's where the resilience and the hope comes from. So for many of us, and mostly everybody that's probably on this Zoom too, you know, they're building that trusted space for the people they love. And yet sometimes still we as human beings with complicated emotions, or complicated fears, complicated concerns, aren't necessarily building our own resilience and hope, even if we have that supportive place. And we need more. And we need to watch for that. And as you're saying, Justin, you know, seeing that maybe you would have been able to kind of help your grandnephew a little more earlier on. Because once we understand that, we sort of know what to look for, and we know what questions to ask or how to have conversations or to be open to those conversations, so much more helpful for our kids, for educators, for students, for all of us who, you know, our role as adults are to support children and support youth so that they can become really wonderful adults as well, right? So we all have a kind of a responsibility in that.
For sure.
Any other questions? Well, I'm going to just say thank you so much for the opportunity. I am so glad to share these resources. I think that, you know, all of you for joining on your lunch hour, props to you. I think that we can close out, and I want to say, you know, take 5 minutes that you have now, grab something to eat, go and use the restroom, go walk outside, take a breath, whatever it is you can do, help yourself find that balance. And I have listed my information in the chat. Jessica will be sending everybody the resource list. Please reach out if you have any questions or want any more information or need help accessing all of these resources. So thank you.
Thank you, Justine. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Just some closing comments here. We are going to be posting the CalHOPE resources on our DAC webpage on our external website. And so that'll be available for everybody, along with the recording for this Lunch and Learn. So if you know people that would be interested or would benefit from these resources or this information, feel free to share the link with them, because I feel like a lot of people want to make these things, but it's lunchtime, meetings go long. We understand that. So feel free to share that link with them, and we'll be sending that out probably sometime in the next week or so people have access to that. Also, just a reminder for everybody, we have a whole series of events going on for Mental Health Awareness Month. We have our Sound Bowl event next Wednesday, both in person in our auditorium and on Zoom. We also have Mental Health Matters Day out at the Capitol on the 24th. I'm looking at my calendar, it's over here. And then on the 25th, we have our Mental Health Awareness Film Festival, both in the CDFA auditorium and via Zoom. So we got a lot going on. Thank everybody for being here for the first event for Mental Health Awareness Month. And I hope to see everybody sporadically throughout the month at our other events. So we appreciate you all being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.